Jennifer and Nathan have been together for a long time. The young people met in college, and they have been planning a future together ever since. The young man grew up in an orphanage and even got his name there. The caretakers chose it for him. He always dreamed of a large and strong family. The young people held a small wedding ceremony and moved in together. Unfortunately, Jennifer couldn't get pregnant for a long time. Nathan worked as a firefighter, while Jennifer got regular medical checkups. It was only 3 years later the woman found out that she was finally expecting a child. The joy of the couple knew no bounds. At the ultrasound, the doctor talked with the couple for a long time, getting their family history and asking if they had twins or triplets in the family. At first, the young couple didn't realize why the doctor was asking so many questions, but then they learned that they were expecting triplets. Nathan was on cloud 9 over the news. When Jennifer's mother, Vanessa, learned of her daughter's pregnancy, she immediately came from the village to visit the young family. She brought a huge bag full of all sorts of treats and persuaded the young woman to eat well because she had 3 children to bear. At that moment, Nathan laughed, saying that if anything were to happen, they could definitely rely on Vanessa to feed them all. The young man couldn't have imagined at the time that his words would turn out to be prophetic. In early fall, when Jennifer was already far along into her pregnancy, a terrible tragedy befell their family. Nathan died on the job, putting out a major fire. It was his duty, and he couldn't have done anything differently. Nathan rushed into the fire to help his partner and proved himself a real hero. Thanks to him, several more people were saved. Jennifer couldn't believe what had happened. Her beloved husband, who was happy and healthy just a few hours ago, would never come home again. The young widow lay exhausted for several days, clutching her husband's shirt, smelling it, and trying to remember her husband's scent forever. After the funeral, Vanessa talked with her daughter for a long time, convincing her that she needed to return to life and live for the sake of her unborn children. When the babies were born, Jennifer seemed to have woken up from the terrible dream that her life had become. 2 months after her husband's death, 3 tiny boys were born. Now the life of the young mother consisted solely of taking care of the newborns. Fortunately, Vanessa was always there to help her daughter as best she could. When the boys got bigger and started taking their first steps, Jennifer began to think about finding a job. Her mother supported her in this decision because the child benefits weren't enough to raise the kids, and so getting any extra income was very important for the family. Thus, 2 years passed. Vanessa babysat with the boys, while Jennifer worked as a waitress in a restaurant. From the young, pretty woman she once was, the young mother turned into an exhausted shadow. She looked drained, pale, and always tired. Jennifer was worried that she would be fired from her job because the waitresses were considered the face of the restaurant, so they needed to always be cheerful and smiling. But so many responsibilities had fallen on her shoulders that all she wanted to do was cry her eyes out. That day, Jennifer was on her way to work when she suddenly heard someone singing and playing the guitar. For some reason, the woman immediately drew attention to the street musician. She came closer and was dumbfounded. She recognized the homeless man as her husband's partner whom he'd once saved. Jennifer hadn't seen the young man for a long time, and now he was sitting in a wheelchair, unshaven and poorly dressed, but it was definitely him. The woman came even closer and softly called out the man's name. "Hi, Charlie. What happened to you?" The man stopped singing and raised his head. He peered into the stranger's face for a long time and then said happily, "Jennifer, I can't believe my eyes." It was obvious that the musician was very happy to see the young woman, but Jennifer was having a hard time pulling herself together from the shock. Charlie had always been the life of the party and loved to play the guitar. He grew up in the same orphanage as Nathan, and Jennifer had heard many stories from her husband about his best friend's kindness and perseverance. Charlie said that he ended up in the wheelchair after the fire, and his wife had left him for another healthy man. They sold the apartment during the divorce, and the man was so devastated that he binge drank for a while. The money ran out quickly, and my whole life turned into a continuous hell. For the longest time, I couldn't stop thinking that I would have rather died in that fire. The man confessed, "But I don't drink anymore. Nathan gave his life to save me, so I can't allow myself to waste it. I was left homeless without an income, without a family, and handicapped. Now the street has become my home, and the only goal I have is to earn enough money to buy food." Listening to Nathan's story, Jennifer couldn't stop crying. She hadn't heard anything about Charlie since her husband's death, so she couldn't have imagined how hard it was for him. The woman asked her friend to drive up to the back entrance of the restaurant where she worked as a waitress in 3 hours. She brought out some food and promised Charlie to give him a meal every day. Ever since then, they started seeing each other regularly. Nathan even came to Jennifer's home a few times and was happy to play with her sons. But then something bad happened. Someone told the manager that the waitress was taking food from the kitchen and feeding some homeless man. The management fired the woman on the spot without even letting her explain herself. What happened next shocked everyone. Vanessa was worried about the family's well-being, but Jennifer reassured her mother and firmly believed that everything would work out. And she was right. The kids started attending a private daycare center and their mother got a job as a teacher there. It didn't pay much, but at least she felt more comfortable at her new place of work. The young woman now looked much better, and all her friends started noting that she was literally glowing. Spending time with Charlie gave the woman strength and cheered her up. She was convinced that he would definitely be able to walk again one day and didn't let him give up on himself. The young people often walked to their favorite places in the city, and on weekends they went to the lake. That day, as Jennifer and Nathan were on their way home, they witnessed a terrible accident. A car crashed into a concrete pillar, and the truck that was responsible for the accident immediately left the scene. The young people couldn't just ignore the situation and rushed to help the victims. The woman behind the wheel was unconscious, and there was a tiny baby in a car seat. There was smoke coming from the car, and a fire could break out at any moment. Charlie broke the glass of the back door, pulled out the baby in the car seat, and handed it over to Jennifer. Then he pulled himself up into the car and managed to free the woman. Jennifer couldn't even begin to understand how he managed to do it. Apparently, years of firefighter training didn't go to waste. The young people loaded the woman into the wheelchair, and Jennifer pushed her to a safe distance from the car, where her baby was already waiting for her. Jennifer was in a hurry because she had to return for Charlie. But there was an explosion. The woman screamed and turned around and saw her friend unharmed crawling away from the burning car. Jennifer called for the ambulance. Then she pulled out the victim's phone from her pocket and dialed the last number from her call history. She was lucky, and a man quickly answered the call. It was the woman's husband. He arrived at the scene in a matter of minutes. He was a wealthy man who arrived at the scene with a jeep full of bodyguards. Seeing the burning car, the man literally couldn't pull himself together from the thought of how it all could have ended. And when he realized that it was the fragile young woman and the disabled man covered with soot who saved his wife and child, he immediately realized what he had to do to thank them. 2 weeks later, Charlie got surgery at one of the best clinics, and after the physical therapy course, a new big house was already waiting for him, where he then lived happily with Jennifer and her sons. In addition to getting the family a house, the grateful rich man also hired Charlie to work for him, as well as paid for the couple's wedding at the very same restaurant from which Jennifer was once fired.